Welcome to Inverkeithing High School Maths Department. Today we're going to talk about simplifying fractions, and I'm going to show you two methods today. The first method is something that I think you will have seen in primary schools called halving, and the second method is my preferred method because it asks us to think about our times tables and pulls out what we call our highest common factor. That leads nicely on to my top tip for this topic, is to make sure that you know your times tables, as that should make simplifying fractions quick and easy. So let's start with the halving method. What you do is you halve both your numerator and your denominator. Looking at this fraction here, I know I can halve it because my numerator is even and my denominator is even. So first of all, I'm going to start with my numerator, and I'm going to say 16 divided by 2 gives me 8. And I'm going to show that I have halved it or divided it by 2. And then, because with everything with fractions, what you do to your numerator, you have to do to the denominator. I'm going to then halve my denominator. 40 divided by 2, or halved, is 20. Looking at this fraction then, I can see that both the numerator and the denominator are both still even, meaning they can both be divided by 2. So dividing my numerator by 2, 8 divided by 2, or halving it, gives me 4. Then, as I've divided my numerator by 2, I also have to do the same to my denominator. So I'm going to divide that by 2, giving me 10. Looking at this fraction here, I can see that the numerator is still even, and the denominator is still even, so we need to halve one more time. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now in this fraction that we have here, we have our numerator is even and our denominator is odd, which makes me think that I cannot halve it. However, I might be able to divide it by another number, so I should check. Well, what numbers fit into 2? Well, it's only 1 and 2. If I divide my numerator by 2, I get 1. But if I was to divide my denominator by 2, I wouldn't get a whole number. So that means that I know I need to stop there. Moving on to method 2, it might need a little bit more work initially, however it means that we can jump right to the most simplified fraction from the very first step. So you can see here I've written the number 16 and I've written the number 40. That's going to allow me to write out the factors of the number 16 and 40. Starting with the number 16 then, I think what two numbers multiply to give 16? So we start with the easiest one. 1 times 16 gives me 16. 2 times 8 gives me 16. 3 times, well, 16 is not in our 3 times table, so I don't need to write that down. And 4 times 4 gives me 16. I know that this is the last factor of 16 because I can see that all my numbers go up in order here. So it goes 1, 2, 4, 8 and 16. Looking at our number 40 then, our first two factors of 40 are 1 times 40. We can do 2 times 20. Again, 3 is not fit into 40 with nothing left over, so we don't need to have any number that multiplies by 3 to give us 40. We then have 4 times 10, which gives us 40, and 5 times 8, which gives us 40. If I think about 6, I know that number 40 is not in the 6 times table. I think about the number 7, I know that's also not in, 40 is not also in the 7 times table. So I know I've got all my numbers because I've done 1, 2, 4, 5, I've checked 6, I've checked 7, and then 8, 10, 20, 40. This is a nice easy way to make sure you can figure out all the factors of a number. However, we're still nowhere near simplifying. The next thing we have to do is find what's called the highest common factor. Now how I do that is I look through and I say, what are my common factors? Well, 1 is both in a factor of 16 and a factor of 40. 2 is both a factor of 16 and a factor of 40. 4 is both a factor of 16 and a factor of 40. And in fact, 8 is both a factor of 16 and a factor of 40. So if I'm looking at my highest common factor, I'm looking at the biggest number that is circled. So that's going to tell me my highest common factor is 8. From there then, I can now finally look at simplifying my fractions. So I'm going to use my highest common factor to divide both the numerator and the denominator. So 16 divided by 8 gives me an answer of 2. And 40 divided by 8, as we do the same to the numerator as we do to the denominator, gives us an answer of 5. Now I know this is the final answer because it's the same as the one above, and because I've used this really thorough method to divide by my highest common factor, meaning that it will not be able to be simplified further. I'm going to use method 2 as we go through the rest of the examples. However, sometimes it would be easier to use method 1. You only learn this with practice, so I would encourage you to look at your numeracy booklet or ask your teacher for some extra practice on simplifying fractions if you're having a problem. Looking at then our next fraction, which is 32 over 50. So again, I'm going to start by writing out my factors of 32. So that's 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 3 doesn't multiply, it doesn't fit into our 32, 4 times by our 8, 5 times nothing, 6 times nothing, and 7 times nothing. Looking at our factors of 50 then, I've got 1 times 50, 2 times 25, 3 times nothing, 4 times nothing, 5 times 10, and I know that 50 is not on any other times table, so I'm just going to stop right there. Then I'm looking at finding my highest common factor. So I'm looking at circling all the numbers that are the same. So 1 is the same, and 2 is the same. 4 is not the same, 8 is not in this factor, neither is 16 or 32. So in this case, our highest common factor is actually only 2. So I'm going to divide my numerator by 2, and I'm going to divide my denominator by 2. 32 halved, or divided by 2, is 16, and 50 halved, or divided by 2, is 25. That is our fraction in its simplest form. We actually could have just done method 1. However, this way I know that there's no way that this fraction could be simplified further. Looking at our 16 over 32, I'm actually just going to copy down our factors from here. So that was our 1 times by our 32, our 2 times by our 16, and our 4 times by our 8. And our factors of 16, so 1 times 16, copied from here, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. Looking again for my highest common factor. Okay, well I know that 1 is the same in both, 2 is in both, 4 is in both, 8 is in both, and 16 is in fact a factor of both. So this time I'm going to use my highest common factor of 16. So I'm going to divide by 16. We should know that taking a number and dividing it by itself gives us an answer of 1. And 32 divided by 16 is pretty hard to do in our head, but if you just think about adding on lots of 16, you know that that is just our answer of 2. So 32 divided by 16 is our 2. Moving on then, we're going to look at 3 over 12. Again, I'm going to use the same system. I'm going to think about my factors of 3. And that is just 1 times 3. That is because 3 is a prime number. And prime number is just a number that can only be divided by 1 and itself. The number 12, however, has quite a few factors. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. So looking then at our highest common factor, we're going to say, well, 1 is a factor in both, as is 3. So our highest common factor here is 3. So again, we're going to go back and divide both our numerator and our denominator by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. If you're struggling with the division, you can actually use your factors to help you, because 12 divided by 3 leaves us with an answer of 4. And 3 divided by 3 leaves us with an answer of 1. Our last question here then, we have 5 divided by 8. So thinking about the number 5, it has the factors 1 times 5 and 8. We have 1 times 8, 2 times 4. If I look at my factors here then, the only number that is the same is our 1. So we can only divide this fraction by 1, which means it cannot be simplified. It is already in its simplest form. So that's a little bit of information for you on simplifying fractions.